going to be in the end anyway.
First item on the agenda is public comments. Do we have anybody in the public audience who would like to speak to this board on any issue? If not, we'll move on. Committee reports. Education. I talked with Amy concerning the education and particularly concerning the alternative programs. And she and Steve are getting together to have a date. Do we have one yet, Amy?
Before the next meeting.
Okay. Well, we may not have a meeting in February, but I still think we would like to have that education meeting relatively soon to let people know what we're doing and how we're moving ahead. Do you want to pick a date now, or do you want to?
Well, are we not having one because of holidays or something?
Well, there just isn't that much really to do. We can always have a meeting. We can call a meeting if necessary.
We often do not have a February meeting because if you pass your budget tonight, and with turnover rates of at least 4, you're kind of a lame duck board, though a very important board. So then we reorganize in March. The Union Elementary Board voted last night to do the same thing and not to have a February meeting unless needed, but their subcommittees are still going to continue to meet.
Yeah, we'll talk.
Okay, well, what we'll do then is get a notice out to you as soon as possible and to the press as to when this meeting will take place. And the general topic or the agenda will be the alternative program. We're moving ahead with it, where we are, and a description of what we feel will be taking place or is taking place, will be taking place in the future and is taking place at the present time. Steve and Amy, are you comfortable with that? Mm-hmm. Very good. If you just let me know when you get a date, I can get a hold of somebody and we'll get it.
Let us know so we can warn it too.
Yeah, so we can warn it, exactly. Food service, Carrie?
Yeah, so food service met last in November, and we did not meet this month. I'm not sure why exactly, but we will probably, I'm assuming next month. I think there were just some conflicts that people had. So in November though, just some of the things that we discussed were ideas to increase membership in the committee. This is something that comes up a lot, but we discussed including members from the Health and Wellness Committee and possibly culinary students from the CDC in case they're interested, as it's a food committee. We talked again about the success of the online menu and new ways to circulate that to make sure everyone knows that that's a possibility to get the menu online. Maureen talked about the partnership with Ocean Spray and the Sea to School program, both of which have been really great for diversifying the menu. There was an update on the CEP rate, which is the community eligibility provision rate, which dropped unexpectedly. So there was some discussion about troubleshooting this, and I think that was just a bit of a surprise. Rates of breakfast participation are somewhat low at the middle school, so we talked about ways to improve that. And I think, if I'm correct on this, there was some discussion about breakfast in the classroom, which is not something that's happening at the middle school now, but it's happened at some of the elementary schools and has improved the breakfast participation rate there. And lastly, just the Health and Wellness Committee work. There's a new requirement to incorporate food issues into the curriculum. So this committee is doing work to prepare a proposal for that, and they expect to be ready at the end of the school year, and we'll present this to the policy committee in September. And that was about it, but that's a couple months ago. And agriculture and land has not been meeting as a larger committee because it's winter, so they are meeting as a smaller working group. And so I did reach out just to see what they've been working on, and here's what I was told. For sustainability and also for the land steward. So sustainability has been working with Bennington College interns as part of the Mellon Grant agreement, which is a grant that was given out and has opened up some possibilities for sustainability and for just ways to use the garden, among other things. So one of the things they're doing is creating wood shop plans for cold frames that the sustainability class will build, and that will increase the growing season a little bit so that they can put those out and start growing as early as February when there's enough sunlight again. And so these interns are also going to help construct the cold frames with the sustainability classes. The land steward and the sustainability class have ordered all the supplies needed to build these cold frames, and they're hoping to start building next week. Seeds and supplies have been ordered to begin this growing season in February. They're planning to start cold tolerant transplants for the cold frames and indoor microgreens. So this is something new and will give students during this term a little bit more experience with gardening, because they usually don't get as much into that. Another project they hope to involve the interns in is the research and planning of a permaculture guild among the chestnut grove, and this is something I think Frank is particularly working on, so he's reached out and they're sort of starting this relationship with the Bennington College interns. And I guess lastly, sustainability is researching the pros and cons of heating the current hoop house, and which would effectively turn it into a greenhouse. But we did talk at our last meeting about the possibility of adding a smaller greenhouse outside the sustainability room instead. So this is just something that they are looking into, but it's just an idea and a discussion at this point.
Right. Are we utilizing the greenhouse that's attached to the high school?
It doesn't often come up in our meetings because it's all related to the middle school, but I know it is being used by certain classes at the high school.
That's good.
I'm forgetting right now which ones exactly, but I know.
And I just had one other question. I'm not really sure how that breakfast program works. Is there a fee involved for the students, or is it free, or how does that work?
It's free.
Breakfast is
Free.
free.
Yeah, I mean,
And any student,
Universal.
any student that wants to participate in it can?
yeah, so they're just trying to figure out how to get more students interested in coming into the cafeteria and participating in it. And I think, there are students that are here, but
And the reason that it isn't more popular, or could be more popular, is seating, or what, Tim?
Actually, food is served in 2 locations. It's served in the cafeteria, and there's a kiosk on the purple square right down the hallway from us. And that's available every day too.
Good.
But they're social butterflies. There's lots of things to do.
I'm sure.
Do they like the menu?
I have kids who eat breakfast every day, and I have kids, despite lunch and breakfast being free to them, never eat in the school. So, you just have some kiddos who don't want to partake in
Okay,
that.
I was just curious as to whether or not you had any insight into,
I couldn't tell you about that. I know which lunch menu ideas or items get long lines out of the door waiting to feed them, and I can tell you ones that are a little less, but I couldn't tell you overall.
okay, thank you.
Very good. Are there any questions of Carrie concerning either the agricultural program or the food service program? If not, we'll move on to finance. The big issue on finance is the budget. The budget for the fiscal year 2020-21. Renee and the administration have spent a lot of time putting together the numbers for this, and the finance committee, which and other members of the board reviewed it at previous meetings plus this meeting, and we have a budget that the finance committee would like to propose to the full board. That budget is an MAU operating increase of 2.4%. The overall total would be 3.99%, which represents the necessity to incorporate the CDC's expenses, tuition money issue within our budget. The biggest item, of course, in any budget is the salary benefit lines, which compose approximately 76% of the total budget if you take a look at our costs. The big issue there has been health insurance, which because of Act 11, which was passed by the legislature, is now a statewide universal health care program that is not only available to those people that we used to cover, those people that we covered in the past fully, which were the teachers and the administrators, but it's been opened up to the support personnel, which is the right thing to do, even though it does add considerably to the cost. unfortunately, we are unable to have a definite figure on that because we're not really sure how many people within the support group, and that support group is about 160 people. Is that right, Renee?
Actually more than 160, but yes.
Okay, somewhere in that number. So we don't really know what, how many, what programs are going to pick up, whether they'll pick up a family program or individual program. And it's difficult because now the amount of contributions to the program really are vary depending whether it's a support personnel or a teacher. It's 20% or 15% within the next year. The other thing about the Act 11 is that for the first half of our fiscal year, we will be running the same health program that we have in the past. It's only at the beginning of 2021 that the new program will start. So, that's just one of the things that we have. In terms of the offsetting revenue, the revenue that comes in that helps meet our expenses, and it has a direct impact on the tax rate, the fund balance, which has been in past years really probably a little bit more than it should be, but it's dropped this year by $300 and some odd thousand, so we don't have quite as much money that we are.
Following the advice of our auditors, that they
Yeah,
felt that
and we would have
carrying
taken.
too big of a
Yeah,
balance.
Right. Generally speaking, the auditors, well, I'm not going to go into it. But anyway, it is, and therefore, we've got a considerable amount of money that has to be raised to meet our expenses at the school. Unfortunately, there are still some areas that we do not know. We do not know what the state will be able to contribute to the general cost of our education, and we do not know what the insurance actual cost will be. We've made the best guess we can, and that best guess comes out that the tax increase through the MAU will vary somewhere between around 4 cents and 11 cents. Is that about right, Renee? Somewhere in that area?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The tax increase because of, related to our budget and our help with the CDC, depending upon where you live and what the CLA is and the number of students that you send, is going to be somewhere between 4 and 11 cents?
Roughly, at this point, yeah.
At this point. And once again, I'd like to emphasize that because we have those question marks, we really don't know what the final figure will be, and we probably won't know until May, because it'll be that long before the state gets back to us and tells us how much money over their base that we have to raise through the property tax. So Renee, what actually would you, what should be the wording? I should know after all these years, but it's just to approve how do you want to word it?
Yeah, no, we just have to approve the expenditure budget, so that's essentially what's going to end up on our warning that the board will have to approve once we have that ready.
Okay, so that would be the 3.99%?
So it's going to be 467.
Yeah, 467.
I'll move it.
Okay, does everybody
Second.
understand? That amount, remember, includes the CDC.
Correct.
So we have a motion on the floor to approve the operating budget of the Mount Anthony School, including the money that must be raised for the CDC, in the amount of $27,869,467. Did you move it?
Yes, I did.
Did you have a second?
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor, any discussion on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Very good.
I abstain.
Oh, I'm sorry, two abstentions.
No.
I abstain.
I voted nay, he abstained.
Okay, let me go through that again. We have a majority that have approved it. We have two that either abstain or vote no. That does it?
That's it. The only other thing I don't know if the board wants to authorize everybody to come in to actually sign the warning, independent of having another special meeting to do that.
That's what we would recommend.
Yeah. I think so. As in the past, when we get that, we have to warn it. The warning has to take place between the 23rd and the 5th, I think, something like that. So we'll get it prepared and get it ready, and we'll just ask you to come in and put your signature on it. Dave and you, I don't know, you'll have time to get in. You're home, what?
Mondays.
Yep, I can do it.
Okay, that's not a problem. Nelson, I'm sure, can too. Okay, if there are no other questions for the Finance Committee, we'll move to, yes.
Yeah, I just want to say, and I think probably everybody here understands, but for those who might be watching from home, the legislature did not pass a law that said there had to be health insurance for support staff. The Act 11 said that the benefit would be negotiated at a state level, and which was the governor's idea, and the legislature went along. So the negotiations resulted in this particular outcome this time.
It's actually the arbitrator.
Yes, thank you.
There were the two sides. There were the side that was represented by the School Board Association, and there was the side that was represented by the Teachers Association. And it was decided early, the legislature decided early that an arbitrator would be asked, because they were right in the sense that those two units probably could not come up with a final solution. So they demanded that an arbitrator be hired, and that he have a schedule where he had to offer his opinion by a certain date. I've forgotten what it was, but it was
The law did have
month
the date.
ago. But that's right. Thank you. And also, I'd like to say that on the budget, that the budget does not require any layoffs. In other words, we have not determined that we were going to be sending pink slips to anybody. We are still too early in the year to be able to have an accurate indication as to who will be returning, who won't be returning, and how we will best use those people that are returning. But the budget does not require pink slips to be sent out. Jim, would you like to add anything?
No, our goal has always been through attrition, open positions, and as you mentioned, we only know who has indicated that they're going to retire, because by the contract, they have to tell us that by June 6th if they want to be eligible for certain benefits. So we know that, but anybody who's not returning for whatever other reason, they're free not to tell us for quite some time. So the principals have some flexibility to see that whatever open positions are not filled, it has as little impact on delivery to students as possible.
Very good. Any board member like to make any comments on the budget that we just approved?
I don't like it, but I don't see an alternative, but
Well,
to warn it.
it's what it is. And, you know, you got to have a budget,
Yeah.
and it costs, there's no question about
We
it.
should point out, MAU's budget's going up 2.4%. That's a
Right.
pretty minimal increase for considering all the operating costs. So I think the committee and the finance department did a great job to bring in that budget at 2.4% increase. Yeah, it is reporting higher because of, the pass-through on the CDC comes through on us, so that brings it up to the 3.9. But the cost to operate MAU schools is only going up 2.4%.
Now, I should also point out that tax over the past, not including this year, but over the past 3 years, there has been actually a decline in the tax rate demanded by the school budgets, with the exception, I think, of Woodford or something. Is that right? With the exception of Woodford, but they've got lots of money up in Woodford. So.
Oh, yeah. Just rolling over it.
Growing budget.
And just so people know, everything, all the documents that we reviewed earlier are up on the website, so if people at home are looking to see, exactly what those tax reductions have been over the years, they just have to go in and take a look at that, and they can see by town what the decreases have been.
And I also should point out that each town is different, because each town has a different CLA. Each town has a different number of students that they send to MAU, and the amount of taxes that the town has to raise is directly related to those two issues. So to make a blanket statement is very difficult. Okay, well, we can move on then if there are no other issues. In terms of finance, we have a treasurer's report.
So moved.
Okay, we can, have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions, and budget status, that's for your information. We go down to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, do we have any discussion? I'd just like to mention that within this item on the agenda is a letter that we received from Rick Crozier, who has spent 20 years at this school and done a remarkably fine job working with children who need the type of support that he can give. We had some difficult issues to address during the fall. Those issues are still under discussion, but they really do not diminish at all the service that he rendered the kids within this school, he and his wife, and the programs that they did. So even though it's not on the happiest of terms, I feel that we owe Rick Croziers a great deal of thanks for the work that they did. It is often difficult when change takes place, particularly if you've worked on something for a long period of time and you are committed to that. On the other side, it does not mean that there aren't other solutions to the same type of problems that may work better for more of the kids. And that's what we're trying to do. But once again, I'd just like to express on behalf of the board our appreciation for the many hours of fine work that family did for MAU students and for the community. Okay. Are there any other issues on the consent agenda that anybody would like to address?
I don't have an issue, but I have a question about the nomination forms and the amount, the pay that is authorized. Is that by contract?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if you're talking about the nomination forms for teaching positions or?
Well, yes, for the after-school, primarily the after-school.
The after-school program is really there's something called Appendix C. And Appendix C was developed, gosh, I don't know how many years ago.
But it's
Dave,
appendix
you
C
were-
of the contract.
Okay.
They're negotiated rates, it's not.
Grace, and what it is, it's a series of probably 13 or
Yeah.
14 different things that have everything to do with the number of students, how many night games, blah, blah, blah. And there's a scale, and how many years you've been doing it, how many students, this, that, and the other thing. And that is the determining factor as to what those salaries would be. So
Okay.
it is part of the contract. as
That's
Jim
what I
said.
thought. Has anybody ever tried to apply the man-hours involved?
Oh,
For some
well,
of,
that's all in those.
That's
in
all
that's all
calculated
part of
in
that
the-
criterion.
okay.
You know, Dave can speak more directly to it in terms of man hours and things, but a lot of time was spent in developing that matrix that is used to determine what the salary should be for each position.
Thank you.
Any other? If not, we can move on. Then policies,
Did we
No
did we
meeting.
vote the consent
oh no,
agenda?
sorry, we haven't
Didn't vote
voted,
yet.
sorry, thank you. All those in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Very good. Policies,
We
It's
had
the
no,
January meeting.
we had no meeting, so.
okay. Administrators report, we can start off with Steve Nixon.
Thank you. I'd just like everyone to know that our exams are January 22nd, and on January 22nd, that's first and third period classes will be holding their exams, and the following day on the 23rd, second and fourth period will be holding their exams, but they are full days of school for the students. I'd also like to bring to the attention of the board one of our students, Gabe Niles. I don't know if you've ever met Gabe, but Gabe is an amazing, amazing guy. And you may have read about him in the paper. He has been nominated for West Point, the Air Force Academy, the Merchant Marine Academy, and he was asked if he'd be interested to be nominated for Annapolis, the Naval Academy. Gabe has also applied to the Coast Guard, to which he hopes he gets accepted. His goal is to fly search and rescue helicopters. And he's currently a volunteer firefighter, and he likes to help people, and that's what carries him into wanting to do this in the Coast Guard. So I just wanted to make it public that Gabe is a great example of some of the fantastic students we have at our high school, and I just wanted him to be recognized for that. Also to let you know that in the month of January, we are currently in the middle of our MAP testing window, and that ends at the end of January. And we use the window in the winter for our growth measurements because it is the opportunity for our 2 semester MAP groups to overlap. I'd also like to bring to the attention of the board that one of our math teachers, Randi has achieved national board certification. And that is a pretty grueling process if you know anything about that. So our congratulations to Randi on all of his hard work. On January 25th, I believe that's a Saturday, in the auditorium is I believe the second British Invasion concert. So if you have the opportunity, you can drop by the high school and pick up some tickets for that. For parents, we'd like you to know that our new semester begins January 27th. And based on the fact that our new semester begins on the 27th, we have an open house at the high school on February 6th for all parents to come and get the opportunity to follow their child's second semester schedule and get to meet their second semester schedule teachers. Students will begin scheduling for next year the first week in February. So if there's any parents who are listening, if you would like, please call the guidance department. If you would wish to ask any questions about your child's schedule or to work on your child's schedule or to look at your child's personalized learning plan with the guidance counselors, which will help you have a say in the classes your child takes next year, and we would like as much parent involvement as possible. On February 28th, we have been chosen to host the state wrestling championship. Actually, the entire championship, I believe, runs the 28th and the 29th, but the 28th is a Friday, it's a school day, and upon the recommendation of our athletic director, Ashley Hoyt, we're supposedly getting somewhere between 200 and 300 people descending on the campus around 10:30 in the morning, because that's when the state is beginning its weigh-in process. So the wrestling programs will be taking over our gymnasium, our cafeteria, and our auditorium from 10:30 on. So we will be having a half day on the 28th for students. It's a full day for teachers. There will be an in-service day for teachers, but that's on February 28th. And the last thing I have for you is on February 27th, which is also the day that the new semester begins and the day before the half day. We have the junior experience, and that is taking place at Castleton University. And what the junior experience is, we take students up there and they get introduced to a variety of college and career pathways to let them look at what they would like to do in the future. So that's some of the things we have upcoming at the high school.
Thank you, and things are going well, I'm sure.
And hopefully this is appropriate, but I would, on a personal note, I would just like to take this opportunity that I really would like to thank the board, the superintendent in his office, and everyone at the high school for all the support they've shown my family recently over the passing of my grandson. We really appreciate that, and that touched us deeply. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tim? Excuse me just a minute. Anybody have any questions for Steve? Tim?
All right. Steve's covered a couple of items, so I can make mine even shorter for you. Map testing. It is the window for winter map testing. Middle schoolers are done. We had testing yesterday and today. We use a 2-hour delay schedule. Students arrive at 8 o'clock. We do testing first thing in the morning. I have to say it felt like a pretty positive thing. My middle school kids are experienced with this. Staff did a nice job. We'll find out results and be using those in February PD days, so we look forward to taking apart the numbers. Monday, I think Steve covered this already, is a holiday, so if your kiddo tells you you don't have to go to school, they're telling the truth. It's Martin Luther King Day. We do observe that. The school will be closed. On the 21st, which is the Tuesday that we return, I'd like to invite the community, the board, and any interested parents to a presentation that evening, Tuesday evening from 6 to 7. It'll be right here in the library. The topic is what you need to know about vaping. We've been getting phone calls from parents kind of throughout the year. I think it kind of goes along with the stories that have been in the news recently. Folks want more information, so we absolutely welcome folks joining us next Tuesday. I want to also thank Glauca Koopman, who is our prevention coordinator. She is new to the middle school staff this year. She's been a wonderful addition, great organizer, and I'm excited to see the presentation on Tuesday. Next Friday, the 24th, is a professional development day. There is no school for students, but teachers and staff will be in the building. So again, if your students tell you that Monday and Friday they don't have school, they're telling the truth, we promise. I also wanted to recognize Gabe Niles. Steve did a nice job. I have a chance to meet with him often because he is a varsity member of the ski team and a captain. And my young son, who's an 8th grader and skis for that team, looks up to him. He's a leader in the student body, and so the high school should be very proud of his recognition by the service academies. I have one last thing. A thank you to Chris McGuire, assistant principal here, David Birch, special educator, and Mike DeMeo, social studies teacher. They gave a presentation today to the faculty regarding personalized learning plans and how students can upload and share their work, which is one piece that we're looking for students to do. Is their plan is a portfolio of their best work to share and inspire them as far as what their plan is, as many of them will be moving on to the high school in the 8th grade. They just did a nice job. It was about a 15-minute presentation, very easily understood. They offered assistance to their fellow faculty members, and they did a nice job, so I just want to recognize them for that. And that's it. Thank you.
Things going well at the middle school, I'm sure.
Sure, as long as I can get rid of the plague that I'm currently, breathing in and out on all of you, we're all set.
I want to congratulate you and the administration on your handling of a difficult situation that took place in the school last week. I guess it was. I'm sure it took I'm sure you got a lot of phone calls and a difficult time. But as far as at least my understanding of it, it was all handled very professionally and well.
Yeah, if it's all right, I would like to say thank you to the Bennington Police Department, and Chief Doucette and his officers reached out and were a support. Vic Milani and the high school were also helpful, just to kind of helpful tips. Mr. Lee, who's my assistant principal, just benefited from a lot of folks, including the superintendent, checking in on us and making sure that any support being offered was recognized. So I have a big school community that helps out, and I appreciate that.
Very good. Any questions of Tim? If not, then we'll move on. Superintendent?
Yeah, this pertains to the high school. I receive this invitation every year. I'll hand it out to you. You have an event, School to Work presentations going on Friday. I know that some board members have gone in the past. This came from my office. Made copies, handed out if you're interested in going short notice. It's this Friday. But there's some very, if you want to get to know what some outstanding work that your students are doing, this is an event you may want to opt into. You don't have to go to the whole thing. I want to be clear on the February meeting, so what I'm understanding is we will not schedule a full board meeting, which is a good thing. That is, you were scheduled to meet on the Wednesday of February vacation, so I'm sure it'd be appreciated that we don't schedule for that week, but active committees will still seek to meet, such as the Education Committee, so we'll work on scheduling those, but just be clear, we will not have a board meeting. The feasibility study on Spinelli Field we're expecting that report from MSK Engineering this Friday. So that may be a special meeting that may have, when we see what that is, and if what costs are, we may be contacted that we need a special meeting just to discuss that and do what the cost looks like, and if you want to move forward with a ballot question on that this year, but we do not have it yet.
Jim, can I ask a question about that, or should I wait until you're
No,
done?
you can.
Is there a, in your mind, is there a cutoff date? Can you tell us the
Yeah,
timing?
it's the same date that, that we would have to, people have to submit papers in to run, the ballot. So January 27th, we would have to decide whether, if we wanted it on the town meeting day ballot, I believe January 27th.
I think we have up
We'd
until
have
the
to-
5th of February, don't we?
Well, to warn your budget, but the reality of getting something printed and into the town clerk and all of that, I wouldn't go beyond like the 27th of
27th.
January,
And you're saying, when are you expecting?
this Friday.
Which is the 17th?
Yeah. So,
And what type of work do you have to do once you receive that?
well, I gotta see what the report looks like. I don't know what format we're gonna receive it in, and breakdown of costs
Yeah.
versus the scope of the work. And, but quick turnaround from our point, and then whether we wanna bring it to a full board, or are we gonna bring it to, a facilities committee first? That's gonna be the chair's call. It's gonna be a very tight,
Yeah.
very tight to get on this ballot. And then this board's gonna have to make a decision with the increase that you're facing on your budget. Do you also, I hate to give ballpark figures because that's the first number people hear, but it's not gonna be a small number,
Yeah.
what that costs.
Yeah.
So the other thing that's really on my mind is the legislative session, and we have a legislator here with us, so feel free to intercede. There's a lot of bills that have been filed that relate to education. Just because a bill is filed, as we all know, doesn't necessarily mean it's difficult to predict, what the follow-up will be from any bill that's introduced. But something that did come out at the end of December, something called the weighting study. And this is from Secretary French, and it's a 75-page document. He submitted it to the legislature. UVM was the contractor who did this. When we talk about weighting, we're talking about the weight assigned to what bills our budget. So like we get more money for a special education student than we get for a regular ed student. And economically disadvantaged, we get more money for that. That's all up for discussion. And any shift in that funding, it's about funding formulas and the weights assigned to different types of students. So anxious about that and what that impact will be going forward for our school districts. There's winners and losers every time there's a shift in a formula. And this is shaping up to be a major shift. So if we see things, we're lucky, this board has 2 legislators, and so I think that, but it bears watching, and I think that helps us, that we have advocates there for us, that, so this all is related to, you've heard Act 173, this weighting study comes from that. Universal pre-K, there's rumors that we're hearing that there could be shifting, that's Act 166, shifting in the funding formula for that, which, that is a big budget item for us, so certainly something that we would want to talk to. I know there's a lot of discussion, Dave mentioned earlier about school construction, but we're also hearing that there's really not a lot of money to fund it. And some of the comments that I've been hearing about is fairness. So if they did do school construction funding now, what happened? What do you do about school districts that went out on their own for funding? Do you do some type of reimbursement to them? Before we get excited and think that there's a lot of money out there, there isn't. And even when there was, my understanding was that even when there was school construction assistance from the state, it never topped more than 30% of eligible costs of the project. And when we talk about eligible costs, there's certain parts of it, of like this building, that was not considered eligible. It's not connected to direct instruction. It's not, like office space often isn't part of it. And sometimes even hallways and corridors are not considered square footage that is under the reimbursement formula. So, but our buildings are aging, and whether they're, we think of this as a new building, but as Principal Payne can tell you, and Paul Daneswell can tell you, there are issues here. And the high school is 50-plus years, and we're scheduled to do a feasibility study next year on that building, and whether there'll be any financial aid. I'm not holding out a lot of hope. State Board of Education, I don't know if you've heard this, but it's in the process of being phased out. That there's, when the state shifted from a education commissioner to a secretary of education, some of the duties that the board have now come into question. So what we're hearing, the Superintendent's Association is hearing, and we'll be watching to see what happens, that within 3 years, many of the duties that currently are with the State Board of Education will be shifted to the Agency of Education and the Secretary of Education. So how that impacts operations will be concerned. Thank you. Speaking of Agency of Education, the capacity of education, but the Agency of Education is also going to be reviewed, or is bills to review that. Because there's a lot of unfilled positions at the Agency of Education. It's a small agency to begin with, but when the impact and the changeover of that agency can have an impact on our daily operations. I think we have a great relationship with the Agency of Education. How they're able to do what they're doing with the staff that they have is really a testament to the dedicated people that work there. We mentioned proficiency-based grading a little bit earlier. There is a bill to, and again, just because a bill's filed doesn't mean that it's going to go into a bill to look at that. There's some challenges to that. It's never going to completely go away. So there's a lot of other minor bills out there that all have education, attached to it in some way, shape, or form. Whether they survive the legislative cycle, I don't know. Scheduled to be in Montpelier tomorrow for a legislative luncheon, but the weather traveling up north may change my plans on whether I make it there or not, because I also have negotiations back here tomorrow night. So, but the weighting study is the big thing that has our eyes on it, and see what happens with that. So I want to relay that message.
Has Renee had a chance to look at it yet? I know it just came out.
No.
She's been busy.
We read the executive summary, but not the entire 75 pages yet. Yeah, that's it.
Does that mean where we could lose a portion of the state funding?
Shifts in the formula could, we receive a significant amount of funding because of our economically disadvantaged students and the high percentage of special education students. If they shift that some way, we could possibly gain money. I don't know. But it's the unknown that has us watching what will happen in the legislative session.
Very good.
Make sure we get more, please.
Everybody always wants more. Have you ever heard anyone say, give me less?
The negotiation process is going on. Rob, do you have anything to report on ESP?
Basically nothing. We met once. We're meeting again tomorrow at the initial meeting. Essentially dates were scheduled and nothing of substance was discussed.
The teachers' negotiations is meeting again tomorrow also?
Yeah, right after ESP.
Right after ESP, Leon's involved with those, and we've had a salary proposal from the association. We'll be presenting some of our thoughts at this next meeting, and I think it's at the next meeting that we've agreed to have an arbitrator come in. Is that right? I think so.
I think by the February date.
Okay, very soon anyway. We'll have an arbitrator come in, and in the past we've found that to be very helpful.
It certainly accelerates the process.
Yes, I would like to just remind you that Amy and Steve are going to get together to come up with a date for an education meeting, which will really revolve around the alternative programs. And Amy will get back to us, when that date is determined. Jim has already mentioned that unless something comes up, and I'm not at all hesitant about calling the meeting, if, for instance, we have a positive review of the field proposal, we can combine that with an education meeting or something to get towards feeling on it. But we'll just wait and see how things go there. Are there any other issues that should be brought before this board? Yes.
Could I suggest we ought to have board meetings occasionally at the high school? It's, I'm not sure how many folks visit that place, but I think it would be good to get in and see what it looks like.
We could use the conference room there?
Yeah, we'd have to use the CDC assembly room as far as I know. It's the only place that CAT TV could broadcast from.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, what we took in it. And that did mention one thing I had in my note that I got asked, so I wanted to ask this board. Is there any consideration to move this meeting to earlier than 7 o'clock? Some board members have asked me to ask that to be considered. For me, I used to be later, I didn't mind the later time because I had to be in Pownell for 5:30, but that doesn't happen on the same night anymore, so I'm open to want to keep it at 7, but it was some.
We'll discuss it.
Okay, just putting it up there.
Okay. Are there any, excuse me, are there any other issues to go before this board?
I was just gonna ask, was anybody else going to school or work things?
Maybe, Leon.
Yeah, it's in 2 blocks really before you have a break, and so I would want to get together with them, so I'll try to get there too, so.
Anything else there?
That's it.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Very good, thank you all very much.